So my name is Gianni, and I'm of this group here, the person who traveled the least, but I was also the person who's here last. So make of that what you will. I'm a director of product design in Zendesk, and I've also been a past speaker here, but I'm delighted to introduce this panel. Over the last, between last week we had a call, and earlier on we've had some great conversations about diaper changing children, paternity leave, and some other interesting things that I won't repeat while on mic. So I'm going to pass it over to the panel to introduce themselves.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Golnaz Nozari. I'm the tech lead at Candy Crush Saga. And believe me, that was my picture on the top left there, even though it doesn't look like me at all. 8 years old photo. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Joe Meersman. I'm a product design director at a legal and financial technology firm by the name of Intapp. And over the last 20 years of my career, I've worked at IBM as well as like, I'd say shops that are about the size of like, 2 individuals and a dog. So I'm really happy to be here.
Great. Thank you. Hi, my name is Ania Kaliska, and I work at Allegro, the biggest European marketplace. I work as a research ops, so supporting the research team in my company. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. Very good to see and be here, which is, so I'm going to dig right in, and Golnaz, I'm actually going to start with you, just because you're beside me. But as you all can see, we've got an interesting mix of people who are kind of doing management and some people who don't have any direct reports. But as someone who I'm correct in saying you don't have any direct reports at the moment, I'm interested to understand, since this talk is about how leaders empower teams, where do you see the line between someone who is a people manager and someone who's not a people manager when it comes to empowering teams?
Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the main difference is about like if you have some actual responsibility as a people manager, then you will have direct reports that you need to keep working with them, keep an eye on their performance and all of this stuff and do the official stuff. But as the lead, you still are in charge of these kind of things as well. You need to make sure to have a performing team, make sure that each individual is doing well, are happy with their work, the team is working well together. So I think empowerment should be done by both the people manager and the leader. And to be honest, in my opinion, it is more of a job of a leader to empower people in the team than a manager that might not sit all the time with the team.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, you're the opposite side of the fence. How do you see? Do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it?
The question being how to empower teams?
Yeah, and in terms of where you see the line for someone who does have direct reports, where do you see the line between senior people, leaders who don't have direct reports, and yourself who does in terms of empowering the team that you work on?
Sure. I think empowering teams happens at 2 different levels. The first of which is at the individual level, whereby as leaders we can empower individuals to have a distinct voice and to carry it across from design to product and to development in kind of what I'll call a cohesive tone. And then of course there's the collective empowerment and enablement of design teams, which basically means that they have a strong leader to support them in terms of management and kind of charting the path, as well as strong individual contributors to guide them in terms of craft. I mean, ultimately, it's about agency, providing agency, and allowing the entire team to kind of wrangle ambiguity.
Thanks. And Ania, I know we've kind of jumped straight in here, and you're on the ops side. I know you've a deep and rich experience in managing teams in the past. Mm-hmm. You're kind of working in an enablement role in a way. Like, where do you see that enablement, the empowerment of teams? How does that kind of come together in your role?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually, I agree with my previous speaker, because it's really important for the managers and leaders to be close to the team. And the empowerment, for me, and for my team, as I suppose, it comes from the trust and the communication. It's the fundamental piece, I think, because with the good communication, trust, and generally giving people the ownership, I think that's the main reason the empowerment comes from. So I would say that really leaders should be giving people the feeling of decisiveness, engage them, and maybe build the trust across the team and the company. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I have a question about trust later, so let's not get too much into it now, otherwise we won't be spoilers. But without getting too heavy in terms of being right after lunch with this sleepy audience, like, what does empowerment mean to you? Like, how would you like summarize that? What's it between the lines? Because people could perceive that term in different ways.
Mm-hmm. Well, generally, empowerment for me and for my team, as I see it, it means that our leaders give us opportunity to grow, to find, self-improvement, grow within the given role, and we are really engaged in the product team generally, in the product process. So this one is like feeling when you're just not making the job you just have to do, but you feel responsible for the product. You are engaged. You are with the team in the center of the process. So this giving people the ownership, I would say, and I see it with my colleagues that they need to feel that they are responsible for the product, and we really change lives of people by this product. So I think that this is the main reason. Of course, also building the team. Everything that's around this relationships between the teams, it's also really, really important. But I would say that ownership, trust, collaboration, communication, that's, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks very much. Joe, you were talking there a second ago about that line between people who are people managers and them, empowering the team and people who aren't. But can you tell us a little bit about how you go about empowering leaders who don't have direct reports on your team to help empower the broader team?
Absolutely. You had mentioned ownership and accountability, and for me, they're a little different in terms of their nature. So for me, as a leader of a design team, I see myself I'm really careful when I talk about the team, and what I avoid is using the term my team. And because that denotes a degree of ownership that I would have. It's the team, and as a member of the team, I'm of the team. So my role as a leader is to make sure that everyone is accountable for delivering, because at the end of the day, as part of a larger team of teams, right? Like, we're all beholden to the best possible experience that we can deliver. So I'd say the flip side to that is high-level individual contributors. Y'all are gold, and I think some of you know it. And when it comes to the individual contributor and how they lead a team, it's definitely by craft and precision of Pixel, but it's also about like mentoring junior members of the team. And I mean, like 10 years ago, we didn't have the choice to go leadership / management or individual contributorship. So I kind of see that as a nice balanced equation.
And this vernacular switch between my team and their team, is this something that you've developed over time in your career? Like when you're talking about the company that you work for, do you say their company versus my company?
It is something I've kind of evolved over time. And for me, I feel like there's a certain amount of like healthy association I have with my work when it's not my team, when it's not my product, because at the end of the day, like, I don't own any of this, and I think it drives a little bit more of that healthy divide between like work and life a little bit if it's a the instead of a my.
Mm-hmm. And Golnaz, I'll extend this question over to you to understand further. What do you think of this my and de split? Do you think that the like a de kind of might separate someone from the team, or do you understand where he's coming from?
Yes and no. I politely disagree with you on that. I think when I talk about like that, this is my team. It's first of all, I should say that like it's very important if we have built that level of trust and we know about each other in the team. If I'm new to a team, maybe I should be more careful with the words that I'm using. But if they know it, that like when I talk about my team, it's about that like I am part of this team as well, together with you. I don't see any problem with saying that this is my team. Because I'm part of it. It's everyone else's team as well. Like,
yeah, I will totally agree with the same, because I also think that just being a part means like I, feel it the same way as my team. Even if I'm a leader, I'm just in it as the same way as they are. So
yeah, it gives a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Golnaz, that you mentioned trust, because that's where I was kind of going next. And I'm interested, like, there's different nuances between inheriting a team and whether that means that you're moving into a new area of the business or taking on a new team, or you're hiring the team. So essentially net new people. I'm interested in that initial trust and how you go about growing that and gaining that.
Trust is mutual. So it is, as a leader, I should work on gaining the trust from my team at the same time. Like, I should see the outcome of their work to say that, like, if I can trust them. But in my position as a leader, I see that I should first, like, give them more autonomy, for example, give them more control over the things, be more hands-off on the things as much as I can, and then the delivery answers to these expectations. And then, since I mentioned expectations, it's very important to have clear expectations on both sides. And that helps with building a trust. I should be held accountable for what I promised to do in my expectations. When I promise something to do to my team, if I don't do that, that's the perfect way to destroy the trust.
And Ania, I'll ask you the same question, just on trust. What's your opinion?
Well, I think that for building the trust in the team, I think that the communication is the biggest thing, because when the team knows exactly the decisions, that's coming from the top, why this is this way or that way, this is really important. And the open communication also works here a lot, because I think that the feedback the employees give to the leader or other side is really, really important. So this openness for new things, new ideas, flexibility is generally the thing that really builds a trust. And I see it just daily on daily basis on my work. Yeah.
Joe, no, go.
I can take this as my opportunity to politely disagree.
Yeah.
I think transparency is paramount, right? But and we talked about this during our prep call last week, there are moments as leaders where we can't be as transparent as we would want to be. So in the name of transparency, I think there are certain times to say, I understand your concern, I appreciate where you're coming from, I can't give you all the answers at this point in time. So in a way, like, just being honest and straight up about saying, like, I do have an answer, it's not fully formed yet, I think is important. Like, there's nothing more important than telling someone, like, can I get back to you on that? And I think as leaders, not feeling like we have to answer all the questions is really important, because I'd rather tell you I don't have an answer, I can get back to you, or you know what, that's a really good question, let's kind of, can I take that offline? It's a dirty thing to say, but every once in a while it is advisable, is better than just making up some shit on the spot. And I think we've all probably worked for weak leaders that feel like they need to answer something. As designers, we have excellent bullshit radars. And the researchers in the room know that better than anybody else, right? Like, we're finely tuned to it. So I think, There are moments where we can communicate transparently, but there are other moments where it's probably best not to.
Yes, of course, I totally agree, because as a leader previously, I know exactly that there are sometimes I cannot say some things, but I think that the most important thing is here, that if you can't say anything, just don't say anything, and just don't give any signs of something going on. So that's the leader's job, just not to make noise and, panic attacks in the team. So
I think there is a statement that people might not be so in favor of, and that a leader should be political.
You think? Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, you need to know what to say, as they mentioned, when to stop sharing information, and you need to consider the sake of the business at the same time of the sake of the individuals.
But there's always going to be things that any person within a business or any person in essentially anything, can't say. But do you not find it's okay to say, listen, I know a little bit more about that, but I can't share it right now, and I will share it as soon as I can, but just want to let you know there's something else there, and I'll come back to you on it. Yeah. Do you find that that's okay or no?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely okay.
Is that gamesmanship? Is that playing politics, or is that?
Yeah, it depends what you define, how you define politics.
Yeah.
I think it's about, as Ania mentioned, it's about communication. You need to have communication with people, build relationship, and know where to say what, at which situation. But at the same time, you need to be transparent, as Joe said. Yeah, if you are promising something that I'm gonna get back to you, you should definitely get back to it.
Joe, was that my disagreement or was that their disagreement?
I think we can disagree or agree to disagree.
Okay. Yeah. I alluded to the nuances of building trust with people that are net new to your company, or you inherit a new team. So there's a difference there between whether you're the new person or they're the new person. Do you find one is easier or more difficult than the other?
You mean inheriting a team versus building?
No, whether you're the new person or the person you're trying to build trust with is the new person, whether that's on a team or whether that's in a full business.
I mean, I think many of us in the room have lived the combinations and permutations you're talking about. Trust is earned, it's not freely given. And I think an element of trust, other than transparency, is how we deal with conflict. And I can't remember where I saw it or heard it, but I do believe that conflict delayed is conflict compounded. And that there are moments where we just have to be very direct with one another. And I do think that that's an element of the building trust, right? I think those of us that are in leadership positions today should have spent time sweating the pixel and getting things right throughout their careers, creating hundreds of pages of technical requirements back when we had to print those out, right? I think is important because it shows that you've been there, you've done that, and you understand and embrace that. So I think a little bit of that is built over time.
Okay. I'm going to just move us a little bit on and talk about autonomy. And Golnaz, I'm going to direct this at you to start, but people tend to crave autonomy. But where do you see between autonomy and empowerment? Do you think they're mutually exclusive? Do you think it's essential that someone has full autonomy? And how, as a tech lead, do you ensure the engineers that you work with have autonomy, yet you're still able to stay close to their work and what they're doing?
Well, I think talking about autonomy is not something that one size fits all. It's a matter of experience, seniority, variety of experience in the team. For example, if I have a heavy UI UX problem that I want to solve and I have a group of developers only, I can just say, okay, I will give you full autonomy. Go and build it. Yeah. Makes perfect.
Designers love that.
Yeah, you can't give people apples and ask for lemon juice, right? So you need to consider, as the lead, you need to pinpoint what are the things that are lacking in the team while giving autonomy, enough autonomy to the individuals based on their seniority and their expertise. Just pinpoint what is lacking there and then provide them to the team.
Ania, I'm going to extend this down to you on this empowerment front with autonomy. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I totally agree, because giving the autonomy is really important, and I would really say that really giving the autonomy that is connected with the seniority level is really crucial here, because I see this in my team, that the people generally tend to have the autonomy, decisiveness. And it's really connected with the seniority level. But there are some people that don't want to have this, because they don't feel like, I want to be decisive in this context. But the leader should generally see the opportunity and support this in companies and generally in teams. So yeah, I would say that in terms of my team, generally we work mostly autonomous. Many of us really like to do our stuff. We feel like a part of the product team, so we are really engaged in the, going deeper in the process. And leaders are supporting us as just watching if everything goes well, and if some conflicts or problems appear, then they just kick in. And this is really great in terms of the communication also between the product designers, researchers, dev teams generally. So yeah, this builds really, really great team, empowerment.
Joe, your talk was on design critique, and as I was asking Golnaz there a second ago, giving the autonomy yet staying close to the work, is design critique one of the fulcrums you use to pivot yourself in there and get close to designers on your team and their work? And is there other things like that you use to stay close?
For those that are design thinkers and workshoppers, I'm going to respond with a yes and here. I think critique is a great tool for both high-level individual contributors and senior leadership to stay on top of the work and have that purview, right? So I think it's a great mechanism in order to enable us to be closer as former practitioners in leadership roles to the actual work of the work. What I'll say about autonomy is it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, in that I've seen it gone awry, whereby if there isn't enough direction provided, it's easy to see people spin. I don't know how many of you in the room, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands or anything, but have been left more or less autonomous, and they run into kind of that equal force from development or product management that are also autonomous. And we kind of repel like magnets, right? And that's where too much autonomy can be an issue. What I'll say in kind of closing on the topic is I couldn't agree with Golnaz more in that autonomy is not monolithic. Everyone in this room knows what the big bets for their organization are. Okay, as leaders, we have to stay close to that in case we're in a meeting or on a call and somebody calls out like a really nuanced interaction or something that isn't quite right. And the last thing as leaders we want to be able to, we want to be in the position of saying is, yeah, that's not quite right. Like, let me get back to you on that, because that doesn't always work when you're like talking to your boss's boss's boss.
And Golnaz, from your aspect, it's from obviously a different side, being on the dev side, but what are the tools and ways that you empower them, you give them autonomy, the developers you work, but what are the different ways that you also try and stay close to what they're doing while being kind of hands off?
Yeah, well, as the tech lead, I try not to be the one that make the technical decisions all the time. So I would usually rather the devs to get involved with things, work on problems, trying to have their own discussions, come up with a proposal, and then I will review it and bring my 2 cents to it. But yeah, there might be times that I would need to jump in and take control over things. So, but it's mainly about like keeping a balance there, to know that like how much of the work you can just leave it to the developers and show that you trust them with what they are doing, and part of it, yeah, definitely. I'm there for a reason, so.
Yeah, well, we talked about trust and that it needs to be built, and it was interesting. I think you said it earlier on. It's a two-way street. But how have you dealt with in the past one of the developers on your team? And I know you have management experience as well, so feel free to pick from any of your experience. But somebody who is either A, underperforming, or B, underengaged, and also interested in the nuance and difference that you see between those two different things.
Yeah, I would mainly talk about my previous experience because I don't have any direct reports at the moment. But it is mainly about, like, first you need to acknowledge the problem and then try to pinpoint what are the grounds of, like, this person underperforming or is underengaged. For me, it's like, doesn't matter whether it's underengagement or underperformance. And then trying to figure that out. What are their moving motivators, for example? There's an actual a good tool, I don't know if you have used it, to figure out people's moving motivators. It's very nice, I recommend that. And yeah, so look into that, try to talk to the individual, finding what our option is. It's not always about that, like trying to push the person to stay in the team and work on the things. Maybe they are not happy with the project they are working on. So you can try to find them another place in the organization, because at the end of the day, it's better to keep the person inside the company than losing them for the whole. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah. Well, it's your answer. I can't grade it. It's your perceptions from your experience. Ania, I'm going to pass it then to you and just see what's your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, I would agree that underperformance and generally underengagement are connected, and it's generally visible when someone is underengaged, is also probably underperforming. So as I see it in my company, we generally also go with the same direction. If somebody is doing something wrong, it's probably not them. That's whole other things that influence this. So probably maybe changing the team, changing the project, maybe some kind of other responsibilities or something that would just make this people or person more motivated is a great idea. And I also, generally nowadays, it's difficult to find a good match for people in the company, good talents. So it's probably better to move somebody inside the company than just let him go or her go. Yeah.
Joe, do you agree with Ania's statement that underperformance and underengagement always come hand in hand?
If you'll notice, she's smiling because I don't. Listen, I understand that churn costs us all a lot of money in this climate. I'm not going to understate that. I don't mind admitting that I have. I myself, years ago at an agency where we were doing like primarily e-commerce, Hybris, and Indeka deployments, I was overperforming and I was completely unengaged. And I can tell you right now that to me, whereas I understand that there's a connection, I feel like people that are unengaged can do so much more harm to an organization than an underperformer. And the reason why is that morale is something that's felt, right? And if you see someone really talented that's delivering who just doesn't care, it's really, really hard. You can feel it kind of like weigh on a team. There's a surface tension that takes place. It's hard to describe, or maybe I'm just doing a poor job. But I think that in either case, the way to manage it is pretty similar in that you need to, even if you're 3 levels above, pulling someone aside and like taking a walk with them, getting out of the work environment, I think is really important. Or grabbing a coffee, beverage, whatever you want, I think is beneficial. And also understanding that if you work in a large organization, it's okay that someone might not be on the right team or may not be the best fit for that problem to solve. If you're in a smaller organization, yes, churn hurts, but it's better that someone finds the right spot to be productive and grow their career Like, I kind of want all designers to be happy even if they're not with me, you know? So it's okay to part ways, but doing so with clarity, I think is important, because that's the best way to get the right person back on your team.
Do you think that, so you said there's a similar way to try and rectify the situation, but do you think, when someone's underengaged or doing what, we hear quiet quitting a lot these days. I know it's an old term that's like came back like Terminator or something, but do you think there is a way back for people when they are underengaged, no matter how they're performing?
Absolutely. I think bringing it down to just having that human conversation and finding out what's going on with someone is a value. I've worked in many organizations that track people's time off. I have never tracked people's time off because I have to trust them. They're adults. And even when there is a system, I really don't bother tracking my own time off either. Like, as long as people are able to get the job done and they're somewhat productive and happy with what they're doing, it makes all the difference in the world. So I think for me, just being less precious about giving people time and, kind of time away from work, I think is important.
Well, I'm sure while you're over here in Dublin, out of time zone, your team is definitely working hard back in Austin. So that's good. I think it's a nice and unintentional pivot to another thing I have here in Golnaz. I'll start and ask you, where do you see the role of social things in building trust and then building empowerment? So it's particularly coming out of the pandemic when everything is remote and we're all so far away from each other. So whether they're social get-togethers or other social activities, I know literally getting together may not always be possible if people are in different regions, but how important do you see that to be in empowering your team?
I think it's very important for building trust in the team and kind of feel that we are part of the same team, building a relationship between individuals. And yeah, with the pandemic hitting, it was not very easy. We were trying different ways of doing it. Maybe having a Zoom meeting and playing something together with my team to just try to feel like that, yeah, we are doing some social activity together. So now that we are almost back to the normal life, people kind of got used to staying at home in their PJs and working. It's sometimes hard to convince them, oh, this is something good for you. Yeah. Come out of home once in a while and try to socialize with the other ones.
Ania, I'll point it out to you. How important do you see that social aspect of empowering a team?
I think it's very important, and generally not only but about building the relationships between the team members, like the social relationships, but also in terms of sharing knowledge. Maybe it's not always about just social gatherings like we go on a beer or somewhere, but it's also about meetings when we just can exchange knowledge, ideas, and really I as a research ops now, it's also my responsibility to track this time, find this time in the calendars of every 35 people in my team, bigger team, to make this happen, to be just gather one time a week, just make sure that we know what's up, what are we doing, when we can exchange everything, and this makes feel the team like a whole, like we know what's going on generally, even though each one of them and each one of us works on different projects. So it makes just build the team spirit.
It's nearly in a way more important to connect the people who aren't naturally connected by their work. Do you think that's fair to say?
Could you please?
It's nearly more important to connect the people whose work isn't naturally connected. They're all possibly part of a bigger team, but their day-to-day project doesn't bring them together. It doesn't give them the opportunity to naturally just hang out, grab a coffee,
yes,
etc.
Of course, yeah, totally, yeah.
Joe, what do you reckon on the social side?
I mean, similar to Golnaz, as well as probably most of us in the room, we tried everything. Right. I mean, what's
everything?
Oh, I mean, there was trivia. We tried happy hours. By the way, not everyone drinks. We tried like coffee and breakfast. Not everyone drinks coffee. You know, what actually ended up working was giving everyone the opportunity to almost like give like a 30-minute guest lecture on something they were passionate about. So it wasn't like talk about your hobby. It was talk about something that like makes you excited or that like you're a fan of. I mean, someone gave a 30-minute lecture on the difference between like Star Trek, The Next Generation, and all the other odd versions of it. I'm not picking on anyone here, right? Other people went to town on like role-playing games, and it was great because if you get people to talk about what they love, their guard comes down. And when that happens, we can find things that we have in common that we never would have known about otherwise. Not everyone's an extrovert, so like giving the mic to each person and giving them a feel for when it was their turn was really important. The worst thing you can do is spring it on someone like, hey, what's your favorite thing? What's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Tell me more. Yeah, that sort of stuff, it's forced fun.
I know in my work we had something that we used to call the Friday drop-in, and it started in the pandemic as a way for us to come together. All of a sudden, overnight, we're all locked in, you know, our houses and looking at each other across the screen, and it started completely organically and really ad hocly, like, let's just talk about what we're doing for the weekend. Let's just talk about the last book we read. And, you know, it's been running a couple of years. We actually retired it because we rolled it into something else just this week. And it was like emotional. We were all emotional. It was like a flag to say, hey, we've come out of this pandemic. You know, we're still here. We got about 14 seconds left. I'm looking at Catherine to see if I still have time to ask the audience for a question. She's giving me a thumbs up. Is that a thumbs up or a middle finger? 1 minute, one question. All right. Does anyone want to throw their hand up for a question? No one on my team is allowed to ask anything. Yeah, there's a lady down there.
Hi, thank you so much for this.
Oh yeah.
You talked about trust, and you talked about that we have to build trust. But how about create a culture where you come in and you get trust? And my question is kind of like, how can leaders empower that type of a culture where you don't have to build trust, but you can break trust, but you come in and get trust just from being you and being hired getting into that team? So how can, my question is kind of like, what's your thoughts and how can leaders empower that into the team?
And is that question directed at anyone particularly?
No, not really.
Okay.
Who wants to answer?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to work in an environment where trust is the baseline, and I feel like when we're all onboarded at companies, that's what we think, or that's what we hope for. But there's always a little bit of tribalism in the mix. I think the way to maintain it is to have clear goals, and that expectations are realistic, and that if you don't meet a goal, or if you don't absolutely hit the expectation out the park, that's okay. Like, it's gonna be all right. We can work on that together, right? It's probably more carrot than stick, which I feel like some of us may have experienced. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was helpful.
Golnaz or Ania, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, actually, I think that it's really important, and that was a good question, because I think that's giving the new person and team and the feeling that it's really warm welcomed, and it's not the coincidence that this one just joined the team. It's really important, and actually I'm not sure how to do it, but I will definitely take a few minutes to rethink it in terms of onboarding new team members, because it's really cool. Yeah,
I think I would talk about from my own perspective as a leader. If as a leader I'm new to a team, my approach would be that I won't try to just get in and turn up everything upside down. Like, I need to gradually get integrated to the team. I should not even try to force myself into the team. Oh, let's hang out, let's get to know each other. I should give the time to them to observe me in the team and build the trust that way.
Yeah, listen, or maybe you kind of make it sound like National Geographic. You go in there, sniff each other out, you know. All right. On that note, I'll say thank you very much to the guests here. They've all travelled a long way, unlike me. So give them a round of applause. They've been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Well done. And if you see them walking around, grill them. If you see me walking around, don't say anything. I'm only messing. Say hello. But if you see them walking around, grill them. And thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.